Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take source material, uh, dig into it, and really pull out the actionable, the engaging, the stuff that matters.
That's the plan.
And today we are plunging deep into a world that's still, I think, pretty mysterious for a lot of people. The early computer underground.
Yeah, the Wild West days.
Exactly. And within that fascinating, often kind of bizarre landscape, we're zooming right in on one particularly enigmatic figure, a hacker known simply as Par, sometimes the Par Master.
That's right. And our main guide for this journey is the book Underground: Hacking, Madness, and Obsession on the Electronic Frontier. It's by Suelette Dreyfus with research by Julian Assange.
A classic of the genre, really.
It really is. Published back in '97, so it's this incredible snapshot of that era. And the electronic version we're using, it was actually adapted specifically for speech synthesis. So it lets us really get into the text, almost like hearing the stories unfold.
Okay, so our mission today, unpack Par's story. It's a narrative that I think really captures the essence of that early digital frontier.
Totally.
We want to explore, his motivations, what drove him, his actions, which were pretty audacious, the unexpected turns his life took,
Definitely unexpected.
and maybe most importantly, what his experiences tell us about those early days of hacking, the whole nature of information back then, and those really blurry lines between, like, curiosity, rebellion, and, well, crime.
Yeah, where does one end and the other begin?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're about to find out just how fast things could escalate for a young, bright, curious mind on what was, honestly, a brand new electronic frontier. Get ready.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's set the scene first. To really get Par, you have to understand the world he stepped into. We're talking the computer underground, late 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
And this wasn't just about, technical tricks or breaking codes. It was a whole subculture. A brave new world of computer communications, as Dreyfus puts it.
It's a great phrase. It captures that sense of discovery.
It does. Imagine being maybe a bit of an outsider in the real world and suddenly finding this place where you connect, you find your people, you actually belong. That must have been incredibly powerful.
Oh, hugely powerful. It was this realm that offered, well, excitement, but also maybe solace for people who felt like explorers, in this inaccessible realm, as the book says.
Right.
And what's really interesting about Underground is it's not told from the perspective of the police or the victims.
Oh, yeah.
It's told through the eyes of numerous computer hackers. So
Yeah.
you get this really unique, kind of unfiltered view into their world, their thinking, their lives. It's very intimate.
And a massive part of that world, a real cornerstone, was the handle, the online nickname.
Ah, yes, the handle, crucial.
Crucial for, like, two main reasons, right?
Yeah.
First, obvious one,
Okay.
anonymity, shielding your real identity when you're poking around where maybe you shouldn't be.
Essential. Real names meant real trouble.
But second, and maybe just as important, the handle was a statement. It said something about how you saw yourself, your place in the hierarchy,
Yeah.
like a badge.
Exactly. You had these cool names: Hawk, Crawler, ComHack, Daytaking, Spy, Ripmax, Fractal. Each one was like a little piece of self-invention.
Projecting an identity.
Totally. This ability to craft a new persona, this anonymity, it was huge in shaping the culture. It empowered these often very young people.
Absolutely. And while everyone's story was different, Underground points out some, well, common threads among these hackers. It paints a pretty compelling picture.
Sometimes troubling, too.
Sometimes troubling, yeah. A lot of them had this deep-seated rebellion against authority, maybe from, difficult family stuff, or just feeling totally misunderstood.
Right.
You had these really bright kids, super smart, but totally bored or stifled by school. The education system just couldn't handle them,
Couldn't keep up.
couldn't keep up. And then, yeah, there were struggles too. Mental instability comes up, obsession, addiction even,
Yeah.
the sheer thrill of hacking.
So it wasn't just about tech. It was
Yeah.
deeply human, complex psychological drivers looking for intellectual kicks, finding a tribe, not just, trying to make a quick buck. Exactly. That's often missed. It wasn't primarily about money for many of them, especially early on.
That really reframes the whole cybercrime narrative, doesn't it?
It does.
And speaking of early exploits, we got to mention phreaking,
Oh, yeah, the precursor. Phone phreaking.
the art of manipulating phone systems.
Yeah.
Probably the true ancestor of a lot of early computer hacking. Making free calls, exploiting the network itself.
Finding loopholes in the infrastructure.
Yeah. And Dreyfus notes Parr himself got into this later. It shows how intertwined these worlds were. It wasn't just computers, it was the whole telecommunications network, understanding how it all connected.
Right, mastering the system. And these explorers, they needed places to gather, right, to share info, forge these new identities.
Social hubs.
Exactly. In Australia, where Parr's story really takes off, the main hubs were these bulletin board systems, BBSs.
I remember those. Dial-up modems, screeching sounds.
Oh, yeah. The book mentions PI Pacific Island and Zen, both run by this guy, Craig Bowen, described as a surprisingly gentle-faced youth. And these weren't just file repositories. They were, as Dreyfus puts it so well, a realm of place, not space.
I like that. Place, not space.
Yeah. It offered intellectual challenges, a sense of identity, a social scene, especially for kids who felt that, quote, daggy awkwardness in the real world.
Daggy awkwardness. Perfect. It captures that feeling, finding your people online where your brain power was actually valued.
Exactly. Celebrated, even.
And these BBSs, they weren't all the same, were they? The book talks about a kind of hierarchy.
Oh, yeah, definitely tiers. Some were totally legit, open access. But then you had the more exclusive ones, invitation-only boards.
Like secret clubs.
Totally. Places like Greyhawk, The Realm, these were the inner sanctums. They had the secret smoky flavor of the computer underground. You couldn't just join. You had to be invited. You had to prove you had skills or info.
So it fostered this elite feeling, being in the know.
Definitely. But maybe the biggest deal, especially for Parr, was when these hubs went international.
Connecting across borders.
Yeah. The book highlights Altos, a German system. This was huge because it unified the international hacking world.
Wow. So Australia, England, Israel, US, all connecting.
Sharing info, exploits, ideas. Dreyfus calls it instant, real-time pencils with attitude.
Yeah, love it.
And this global network, Altos, that's where Parr first really plugged into the bigger scene. It expanded his world and kind of set the stage for the Citibank incident.
Okay, so let's get to that. This brings us right to Parr and the event that basically changed everything for him. Took him from being, an Australian hacker to being on the radar of international law enforcement. The Citibank incident.
The big one.
And the book really nails the hacker mindset here. It talks about the peculiar state attained by real hackers, where they will do just about anything to obtain a certain piece of information.
That obsessive drive.
Yeah. Parr was deep in that state, consumed by curiosity, this hunger to unlock secrets just because they were there. Not for money necessarily, just the knowledge.
It's a powerful drive. And the whole thing started with another hacker, Handle Force. Force's thing was mapping networks, like an explorer charting new territory. He found this mystery computer, as the book calls it.
Just out there.
Yeah, and it was acting weird, dumping streams of numbers, really unusual, and it had a Saudi header.
Citibank connection. Saudi American Bank.
Bingo. So Force, being careful, shared some vague details with Phoenix, another big-name hacker, but he kept the exact location of the Citibank machine a secret. He knew it was big, maybe too big.
Smart move. But Parr found it anyway, didn't he? Driven by that need-to-know thing.
He did. The book describes him just hammering away at it. Methodical, obsessive, connecting, getting a blank screen, trying again. On his third attempt, just hitting the keyboard, he decides to try the entire alphabet with the control key.
Wow, brute force persistence, just trying every combination.
Total dedication, or obsession maybe, just trying keys until one fits.
One did fit.
One did. Control L, that was the magic keystroke. It just opened the floodgates.
What had
The screen just filled, thousands and thousands of cards. Instant cash flooding his screen. Oh my God. Not just a few numbers.
No, the scale was insane for the time. Dreyfus says more than 4,000 cards, plus info on 130,000 different transactions.
13. Wow, imagine seeing that just pop up on your Apple ice screen.
A digital treasure chest just appeared. Sensitive financial data. Huge.
A 10-megabyte trophy, the source calls it, which back then 10 megs was.
Enormous. A massive amount of data.
So the million-dollar question, or maybe the multi-million-dollar question, what did Parr do with all this?
Well, this is where it gets interesting, and where Parr maybe differs from the stereotype. Yes, he used the cards to make a few free calls. Classic phreaking, right. Keep his connections open.
Standard practice for hackers, then.
Right. But, as the author points out, he hadn't been charging up any jet skis.
Huh. Okay, so no shopping sprees?
No. It's a really key contrast. The book mentions others in the underground had probably been charging up a storm with similar data, like this one carder who tried to send a 367 bouquet of flowers using a stolen card.
Parr suspected Citibank would try to pin every fraudulent charge attempt on him because he had the whole list, but his interest just wasn't financial. It was the hack itself.
The intellectual conquest.
Exactly. But even just accessing it, the potential for fraud,
Yeah.
that got attention fast.
Yeah, I bet.
Citibank's fraud investigator, Larry Wallace, he becomes a major figure, added notes on that incident to his growing file. And pretty soon, the Secret Service got involved.
The Secret Service. Weren't they mostly focused on, like, counterfeit money back then?
Mostly, yeah. Financial fraud. This was new territory for them, too. But the core point the book makes is the Parr master didn't just want the secret, he needed it.
The need.
It wasn't about getting rich, it was the thrill, the high he got from hacking. That was the motivator, almost like an addiction, pushing him to risk it all for that buzz of discovery, of beating the system.
So the Secret Service is now involved. They're watching. But quietly, right? Gathering intel.
Very quietly. Parr had no idea. There was this Telenet security guy, Steve Matthews, who basically went undercover online. He slipped quietly onto Altos looking like any other hacker.
Just lurking. Listening in.
Pretty much, listening, observing conversations. And then, October 27th, 1988, Parr, maybe feeling a bit too confident, a bit magnanimous, starts talking about Citibank cards and how to get them on Altos. Basically bragging about it.
Oh, Parr, that's not smart.
Not smart at all. A huge mistake. Matthews hears this, immediately contacts Larry Wallace at Citibank.
And Walls confirms.
Wallace confirms the cards Parr's talking about are valid, all right, and specifically they belong to the Saudi American bank.
Okay, so that's the concrete proof they needed.
That's the smoking gun. It confirmed how serious it was, how specific Parr's knowledge was. The net was definitely tightening.
And the raid followed pretty quickly after that.
Swift. And apparently pretty chaotic at Parr's house. The book describes agents just tearing the place apart.
Total mess.
Total mess. They emptied the box of cornflakes into the sink looking for hidden computer disks.
Seriously, cornflakes.
Yeah. Shows maybe they weren't totally sure what they were looking for, but they were thorough. Found a ceiling cavity the family didn't even know existed.
Wow.
They confiscated Parr's Apple II, printer and modem, his tools, his world.
Like losing a limb for him, probably.
Probably. But they also took weird stuff, the yellow pages, Nintendo game paddles.
Okay, now that's just bizarre. Guess they grabbed anything electronic-ish.
Maybe. And they even took the garbage. Just covering all bases, desperately searching for any scrap of evidence.
So thorough. And did they find what they were really looking for? The digital evidence?
They did. Under the fish tank, next to his computer, the red shoebox full of disks.
Ah, the shoebox.
That, plus lots of evidence scattered around. From an evidence perspective, they had him. But here's the kicker. What they didn't find was Parr.
He wasn't there.
Nope. He was miles away, in Chicago, attending his aunt's wedding. Completely oblivious.
Wow. Talk about dramatic irony. So what happened back home? His friends.
Scott and Ed, they were there, caught totally by surprise, shaken up, terrified.
I bet.
The agents didn't know who Parr was initially, so they accused Scott of being Parr because the phone line was in his name. They'd been surveilling his car.
Oh, man, rough.
Scott and Ed just swore up and down that they weren't hackers or freakers, and they certainly weren't Parr. But, you know, under considerable pressure, facing being implicated themselves, they eventually gave up his real name.
Ah. Okay.
Then came this really chilling phone call. Parr, still clueless in Chicago, calls home. Just calls Scott to say, hi from the Midwest.
Oh, my.
And Scott, trying to play it cool, just says, fine, nothing much happening here.
Nothing much happening? Wow. The understatement of the century.
Right, but that couldn't hold. Parr must have sensed something.
Yeah, how did he find out?
In a later call, Scott gave him a subtle but clear warning. He told Parr the Secret Service knew about his red bag.
The bag with all his notes.
The bag with everything. His hacking journals, printouts, including the massive Citibank printout that was literally the size of a phone book.
Oh, God. The mother lode.
Exactly. And Parr realized instantly that the Secret Service would be looking for that red bag. If they didn't know what he looked like, they would simply watch for the bag.
Okay, panic time. What did he do?
Snap decision. Pure survival mode. He's at a train station, waiting, probably reeling. He sidled up to a trash bin in a dark corner, looked around, and pulled out the thick wad of Citibank card printouts and stuffed it into the bin. He fluffed a few stray pieces of garbage over the top, trying to hide it.
Wow, dumping the evidence. His biggest score.
Had to. But here's the thing. He couldn't bring himself to ditch everything.
What did he keep?
His computer disks,
Ah.
the red shoebox contents, that represented thousands of hours of work. His conquests, that 10 meg trophy with the 4,000 cards, 130,000
You
transactions.
couldn't let go of that.
No. It shows that deep emotional attachment, right? The trophies. It was proof of his skill, part of his identity. He couldn't just trash that part of himself, even with the feds closing in.
So he dumps the printout, keeps the discs, and now he's officially on the run, a fugitive.
Yep. His life just completely changes, becomes this constant blur of buses and trains, always exhausted, always paranoid, waiting for the knock on the door.
That sounds incredibly stressful. Just constant anxiety.
Relentless. But what's amazing, or maybe just defiant, he keeps hacking.
While on the run, seriously.
Yeah. Blatant, in-your-face feats, things he knew the Secret Service would see, almost like he was thumbing his nose at them, taunting them.
Wow, that takes some nerve. Or maybe desperation?
Or arrogance. The book quotes this voicemail message he left for them. It's pretty aggressive.
What did it say?
Something like, yeah, this is Parr. And all those faggots from the Secret Service who keep calling and hanging up, well, lots of luck. Because, I mean, you're so fucking stupid, it's not even funny.
Whoa, okay. Definitely arrogant and paranoid.
Totally paranoid. He started seeing feds everywhere. Believed they were nearby now, thought cars with glasses and dark suits are feds, that the same cars keep driving by outside day and night. This constant vigilance. It ties into what a police officer, Ken Day, later called the psychological player aspect of law enforcement, trying to wear targets down.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But amidst all that,
Yeah.
chaos, running, paranoia, something else happened, right? Something unexpected on a personal level.
Yeah, this is where the story takes another twist. He formed this intense connection, fell in love, actually.
While a fugitive. With who?
A woman named Theorem. She was Swiss, 23 years old, met her on Altos, that international BBS.
Okay.
The book calls it an accident, him falling for her. I mean, she's in Switzerland, he's on the run in the U.S., she's older. He was only 17 when they met online, and she was already in a relationship with Electron, another well-known Aussie hacker.
Wow, complicated.
Very. But Parr couldn't help himself. This relationship, built purely through text and phone calls, became this crucial anchor for him, something stable in his crazy life.
Amazing that kind of connection could form online, back then especially.
It really is. Shows the power of it. But, you know, their long-distance relationship had some bumpy periods.
Like what?
Well, Theorem had an affair with Pengo, a German hacker who was actually friends with Electron, her boyfriend at the time.
Oh, messy. What did Parr do?
Surprisingly, instead of stirring the pot, Parr showed grace and quiet words of consolation to Electron, who was furious. It reveals this different side of Parr, more mature, empathetic, not just the arrogant hacker.
More complex than just the persona.
Definitely. A whole human drama playing out across continents via modem. But they did eventually meet in person, right?
They did, against all odds. And the book says the relationship proved to be far, far better in person than it had ever been online or on the telephone.
Wow.
They spent 2.5 weeks in each other's arms, and they were glorious, sun-drenched weeks.
Yeah.
A brief, beautiful escape for him.
That's actually quite touching, a moment of normalcy.
It is. But then there's the Black Mountain incident, and a strange twist.
Yeah, the mysterious phone call during Hurricane Hugo, that was a tough one to verify.
Tell us about it. What did Parr claim?
He claimed he made this desperate call to Theorem during Hurricane Hugo from a payphone outside a motel in Black Mountain, North Carolina. Right before, supposedly, the Secret Service raided the motel looking for him.
Okay, sounds dramatic, but hard to prove.
Incredibly hard. Dreyfus describes digging through old news reports on the hurricane, calling the Secret Service countless times, trying to find records of this motel, checking with local police.
Running into dead ends.
Lots of them. This was pre-digital records for a lot of stuff. Records were gone, motel changed owners. Very difficult. It really highlights the challenge of fact-checking in this world. So much was rumor, hearsay, maybe deliberate misdirection.
So did she ever confirm it?
She did eventually. After hitting walls, she writes, she weaved her magic using her American accent and a woman's touch, basically, charmed some info out of the Black Mountain County Police. They confirmed it. The Black Mountain raid had taken place. The county police had supported it.
Wow. So Parr wasn't just being paranoid about that one. They were close.
They were close. It validates his feeling that they were always nearby now, but it also shows how many stories like this were floating around, hard to pin down. And it definitely fed into that paranoia, the feeling of being constantly watched, that psychological player game the feds were playing.
So he's defiant, he's hacking, he's in love, he's paranoid. But the running had to end sometime.
It did. He officially became a fugitive when he missed his court date, failed to show up for his hearing on 10 July 1989.
Didn't his lawyer have a deal worked out?
Yeah, Richard Rosen, this interesting lawyer character, he'd negotiated a deal. Reparations, maybe 15 days or less in juvie, in exchange for Parr's full cooperation with the Secret Service.
That sounds pretty good, actually, all things considered. Why didn't he take it?
He couldn't bring himself to narc? That's the hacker code, right? You don't rat out your own. The thought of being kicked out of the underground, elimination as they called it, was worse to him than jail time.
Wow. Loyalty over freedom.
For him at that moment, yeah. So he stayed on the run until Thanksgiving 1991.
Okay, the capture. How did it happen?
Unexpectedly, he flew to New York to visit an acquaintance, Morty Rosenfeld.
Morty. Wasn't he involved in something shady, too?
Yeah, Morty had been charged by the feds a few months earlier for selling a password to a credit record company. Parr didn't really approve of selling passwords, wasn't his style, but he knew Morty.
So he's visiting Morty.
Hanging out, maybe relaxing for a minute, and boom, the door bursts open. 6 or 7 burly federal agents.
Just like that.
Just like that. Handcuffs on Parr. He sees Morty, now sobbing in the corner, and Parr just knows instantly. You narsed on me.
Ouch. Betrayed by an acquaintance. Brutal end to the chase.
Very brutal. Very personal.
And from there, straight into the system.
First to the FBI offices, which were in the World Trade Center then, for questioning, and then Rikers Island.
Rikers, wow, that must have been a shock to the system for a teenage hacker.
A massive shock. Not a pretty thought, as the book says. He was young, lived online mostly. Suddenly, he's in one of the most notorious jails. He was really nervous about what could happen to a young man in jail.
And was it as bad as he feared?
Sounds like it. He met some serious characters, like faggot killer, a murderer who apparently seemed okay as long as you didn't look at him the wrong way. The kind of terrifying prism logic you hear about.
Yeah, just keeping your head down.
But the worst incident involved this guy named Kentucky, described as wild-eyed, usually zonked out on medication, this horrible, smelly liquid.
Okay.
One day, Kentucky's off his meds, maybe hallucinating, and he just snaps. Tried to kill Parr, just started flailing at him, totally unprovoked.
Oh my God, what happened?
Another inmate, a jewelry heister of all people, jumped in and saved Parr. Pulled Kentucky off him.
Saved by a jewelry thief from a wild-eyed attacker. That's surreal.
Totally surreal. Parr's thought bubble, according to Dreyfus, was, hacker murdered by serial killer in Rikers Island. Aliens told me to do it.
Jeez. That really drives home the danger, the sheer alien environment he was thrown into. A million miles from his keyboard.
Absolutely. The contrast couldn't be starker.
So after nearly a month of that hell,
Yeah.
the legal process starts properly.
Yeah. December 23rd, 1991. Parr pleaded guilty to 2 charges in Monterey County Juvenile Court.
He just admitted everything.
Admitted everything, the whole 9 yards. Yes, I am the Parr master. Yes, I broke into computers. Yes, I took thousands of credit card details from a Citibank machine. Yes, yes, yes.
Wow. Full confession. Why? Was it just giving up?
Partly maybe after Rikers, but mostly because his lawyer, Rosen, had that brilliant ace up his sleeve.
The ACE-B.
Getting the case heard in juvenile court, that was the masterstroke. It meant a potentially much lighter sentence, keeping him out of the adult federal system.
Huge difference. But the charges were still serious, right?
Yeah.
Citibank must have wanted damages.
Oh, yeah. Citibank claimed they'd spent $30,000 on securing its systems afterwards. Parr thought they were seeking maybe up to $3 million in total damages.
$3 million. Wow.
And the prosecution argued that even though Parr didn't cash in himself, his generous distribution of the card numbers led to serious financial losses because other people used them.
Right, the downstream impact.
Exactly. Plus, the feds had also seized that TRW material from him.
TRW, the credit reporting agency.
Yep. Huge databases of people's financial histories, credit scores. Accessing that was another layer of seriousness. Showed the potential for massive identity theft even back then.
So despite being in juvenile court, the stakes were still incredibly high.
Absolutely.
Okay, so he pleads guilty, gets sentenced, presumably. What happened after he got out? Trying to rebuild a life?
Huge challenges. On the plus side, Theorem visited him twice in California in '92. Their relationship continued to blossom, which must have been a massive support.
That's good, something positive. But professionally?
Tough. Really tough. People didn't seem to want to hire him. His amazing self-taught skills just didn't translate to the normal job market.
How so? What happened in interviews?
It sounds soul-destroying. Employers would literally tell him, you don't have any computer skills.
Seriously? To him?
Yeah. And when he tried to explain, they'd ask, which university did you get your degree from? Or which companies did you get your work experience from? He had none of that. No paper trail.
Just raw talent and a criminal record.
Exactly. And that 4-year gap on his resume, 1989 to 1992, what do you say? Successfully completed a telecommuting course for fugitives, trained by the U.S. Secret Service.
Huh. Yeah, probably not the best line for an interview.
Not really. So despite having this incredible practical computer expertise way ahead of many people at the time, he ended up doing basic, dull data entry stuff, clerical work.
Ugh, that's just sad, really. A waste of talent.
It really illustrates the collateral damage, doesn't it? How the system just didn't know what to do with someone like him back then. No pathway for non-traditional tech skills.
And it reflects that broader point the book makes, right? About how the law struggled to understand hacking.
Totally. The book argues that for these look-see hackers, the curious ones, not causing deliberate damage or stealing money, especially the young ones, the problem should be treated, not criminalized.
More like rehabilitation than punishment.
Kind of. The idea was, for many, their intelligence outstretched their maturity. They could do amazing technical things, but didn't grasp the real-world impact.
Bright kids making potentially big mistakes.
Exactly. And the hope was many will be able to overcome or outgrow their addiction to hacking, find constructive outlets. Parr's struggle to get a decent job just highlights those long-term consequences, how hard it was to reintegrate, even when the initial motive wasn't purely malicious.
Okay, so Parr's personal story is intense, but it also connects to this other huge event, right? The WANK worm.
Yeah, the WANK worm attack on NASA. A really significant moment in cyber history.
This wasn't just random vandalism, was it?
No, this was the world's first worm with a political message. It hit NASA in October '89, right around the Galileo space probe launch. Talk about bad timing.
What was the message?
Anti-nuclear stuff. Screens started showing messages like, "Worms against nuclear killers, your system has been officially wanked," with spelling errors and everything, and lines like, "You talk of times of peace for all, and then prepare for war."
Wow. Audacious.
No.
How did NASA react?
Panic, basically. An information void. Staff seeing weird deleted file messages, freaking out. Was it a practical joke or a time bomb about to wipe critical mission data? Chaos.
So who dealt with it? Must have been early days for cybersecurity response.
Very early, ad hoc. Guys like John McMahon at NASA Goddard, Kevin Oberman at the Department of Energy, they became heroes, basically, working nonstop across different networks, SPAN, HepNet, trying to figure out how to stop this thing.
SPAN and HepNet, early networks.
Yeah, NASA's Space Physics Analysis Network and the High Energy Physics Network. Oberman was actually dealing with the worm during the massive 1989 San Francisco earthquake. Shows at the dedication.
Wow. Okay, so where's the connection to Parr's world in Australia?
Well, initially the investigation pointed to France. The electronic trails led to France. Looked like it started there. But then the French investigators dropped their own bombshell. They found evidence of incoming X.25 connections from elsewhere. X.25 was like an early global network protocol.
Right. And these connections came from?
From Australia, right when the worm was being developed.
The Australian connection.
Exactly. And this whole incident, the global nature of it, was a huge wake-up call. It was a major trigger for the creation of, first, the Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams, an international group to share info on security threats, born out of the WANK worm chaos.
Okay, but how does this loop back to Parr specifically?
Here's the weird link. Back in December 1988, shortly after Parr's house was raided, the Secret Service got intel from 2 informants, both hackers.
Okay. What did they say?
They told the feds that Parr was not the Citibank hacker. They insisted the real Citibank hacker was named Phoenix.
Phoenix again, the guy Forrest shared some info with. They were trying to pin it on Phoenix.
Seems like it. Maybe to deflect attention, maybe get leniency. And this idea got picked up by the media.
Oh, great. Media hype.
Yeah, articles by Helen Meredith talking about an Australian connection who supposedly lifted US $563,000 from the US bank. This rumor even got posted on PI, Craig Bowen's BBS, spread like wildfire in the underground.
So Phoenix was suddenly accused of stealing $500,000.
That was the rumor, that Phoenix reportedly boasted that he had stolen some $50,000 from the bank, but it was completely false.
False. How do we know?
Electron, who knew Phoenix well, stated clearly, Phoenix hadn't stolen any money from Citibank. Phoenix was just bragging. circulating fantastic stories about himself to puff up his image in the underground.
Just big noting himself online.
Exactly, pure ego. But this fake story had real consequences. It managed to get them all busted, or at least put them directly in the crosshairs. And it directly impacted Parr by muddying the waters, misdirecting the investigation early on.
Wow, shows the danger of online lies and bravado even back then. Real-world pain from digital bullshit.
Precisely. Fake news, 1980s style, with serious repercussions.
Okay, so Parr's story.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. From that initial thrill of discovery, the intellectual buzz,
Yeah, the pure curiosity.
to the absolute terror of Rikers Island, and then the struggle afterwards. It really gives you this profound, very human window into that early hacker scene.
It does. He kind of embodies both sides, doesn't he? The rebellious spirit of that new frontier, but also the really severe consequences when you cross lines that weren't even clearly drawn yet.
His journey is like a speed run through the evolution of digital crime and law enforcement, right?
Totally. You see the authorities initially clueless, like, what the hell is this? But learning fast. Very fast.
And it makes you think about that line between curiosity and crime and the role of, well, addiction. The book calls it addiction.
Yeah.
That compulsive need to hack.
Yeah, the high he got from hacking. It was clearly a powerful force, often misunderstood, driving these actions even when the risks were huge.
So wrapping this up, what's the takeaway for you listening today? What does Parr's journey tell us now?
Well, I think it's a stark reminder that behind all the tech, the code, the cybersecurity headlines, there's always a human story. Complex motivations, real people, lasting impacts.
Right. It's not just abstract data breaches.
Exactly. And it challenges us, even now, to think about how we define crime when technology moves so fast. Especially when the motives aren't simple greed, and the consequences of getting caught can be so life-altering.
That leads perfectly into our final thought, maybe.
Go for it.
Consider this. Parr, driven mostly by curiosity, not profit, went through this incredible ordeal, prison, stigma, career derailment. If that was the outcome for him back then, how do we today ethically navigate this complex intersection? Digital exploration, personal responsibility, the law, all evolving so rapidly.
It's a tough balance. How do we foster innovation and curiosity without enabling harm? How do we ensure consequences are proportionate, especially for young people?
Exactly. It's a question that started way back in Parr's time, in the early days of the underground, and it's still incredibly relevant today, shaping everything from cybersecurity policy to how we deal with digital natives testing boundaries. It's a conversation that's far from over.